We live then, Buzz? All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of Across the Narrow Sea. I am not Jakob Holtman or Samuel Lind. I am Roy Rogers. Buzz has recruited me to sort of take over, at least for this episode, Across the Narrow Sea. So again, I'm Roy Rogers of the Second Sons and the White Book. With me today, I am joined for this episode by Ryan Jones and John Krause of the San Diego, Southern California Meta. So before I get started, before we do introductions, Buzz wants me to ask you both a very important question. If you were a character in Game of Thrones, let's go with the book, so A Song of Ice and Fire, who would you be?
John?
I'm probably not even cool enough to be Ed Stark, but so I'd be dead. I'd be some dead chud on the side.
So we'll say you're Weimar Royce then. All right, you get to at least there you go.
Top billing.
Yeah, top billing. All right. How about you, two-card design, Jones?
Got a lot of comparisons to Robert Baratheon. The size, the beard, the partying. That's three big things for me. Tormund Giantsbane, if he
I've always thought of you
went
more
off
of a
his diet. Well, I mean, the red really goes with that, but my lifestyle is much more kingly.
That's true, but like Tormund in the book is like a big dude. He's not like a hot Swedish, like life guy. Like Tormund is big in the books, but yeah. All right, so then why don't we? Now that we've done that icebreaker, as we say at school, why don't we have you guys introduce each other? So Ryan, you're probably the more prominent of the two of you to people who sort of just know the community in general. Why don't you tell us who's John? And why does John get to be on this episode?
John Krause is the grandfather of the San Diego and pretty much the SoCal meta. We're basically all here because of his efforts during the CCG to LCG transition. A bunch of people quit around that time, and he was left with nobody. He was a one-man army. And months and months and months of recruiting, kind of fruitless recruiting, I think you'd probably say, John, for a while.
Yeah.
But still staying with it. He ended up getting we got a group of around 5 or 6 pretty early into the LCG that is mostly around to this day. So, John, you brought it down from Northern California, right? Bay Area?
No, I was down here when I started playing.
Okay. All right.
But during the CCG to LCG transition, Northern California was doing a little bit better than Southern California was doing. So,
so John is that's kind of his history, and the present is that he is still in charge of everything LCG in San Diego. John, without any complaints, runs all of our weekly league nights. He runs all of our tournaments. He runs one of the biggest tournaments in San Diego, Kingdom Con. He's the reason we have such a good meta, and I'm not looking forward to the day he quits. Hopefully, I quit before him, which will probably be the case.
All right, John. So you're the glue of the San Diego meta, you could say. So why don't you tell our viewers / listeners, who is this scrub that you're sharing screen time with here?
This Ryan Jones character.
Yeah, I've seen it. I feel like I've seen his face somewhere, but I don't know.
Well, he's the guy who showed up one night to I guess he showed up at Kingdom Con and play tested first, but James took care of that. I don't think I was there that day, but then he showed up one night to our game store and began playing Thrones, and I knew right away that he was a pretty good player. He had played some games before in his life because he understood cost curves and all that stuff. So he was a good player. So I was happy to have him. James and I were happy to have more people, period, but we were happy especially to have Ryan. And from there, we traveled together up to a tournament, CaliCon, and had a great time together. And I think everybody scrubbed out pretty hard at that tournament.
Except you.
Except me. Yeah, that was, yeah. And then after that, everybody kind of just took off and soared. And, we have Ryan Jones with amazing card designs now. So, and
currently in print, right?
2 currently in print, and also fabulous host of Thrones War. But everybody already knows that anyway.
And we'll get to Thrones War in a little bit. But I have on the agenda a few more ice-breaking questions. So, Ryan, can you tell us about the last time you were seasick? What is up? I have no idea what this concept is, but apparently Buzz did his research. So we need some stories from 2000. So this is Worlds 2015, right? Which is when you and I met, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
It feels like so long ago.
It does feel like a long time ago.
That was the last year of first edition and the first year of second edition. That was a packed week of Thrones at the World Championships. 3 first edition championships, and then 1 second edition championship, and then a melee for second edition. That was a long weekend.
Yeah. And you were at the final table or near the final table in all of those events except the melee, maybe? I don't know. I wasn't there for the melee, so.
Joust, I got 3rd. Melee, I got 3rd. And then the draft championships, I won.
Yeah.
So the seasick comment is probably my greatest regret in this living world so far, which means I've lived a pretty good life and I rarely make mistakes. But one of the biggest ones was top 4 against Jakob.
That's a Jakob story. That's
Greyjoy, Dark Wings.
Yeah.
Just no one had heard of that anywhere, and he was doing fantastic. And obviously, he went on to win the World Championships that year. But he had to go through me in the top 4, playing the SoCal Aw Yeah deck. That
degenerate deck.
Blow you up first turn, leave you with 3 cards, and us with 9, and then still just run you over with great laney cards. After that, I had the combo in my hand. I had it in the draw step. I was first player, so I decided to do it in marshalling. It's kind of a long thing to talk about, but it basically hinged on one event called Wheels Within Wheels. And since Jakob was playing Dark Wings, that meant he could only have singleton copies of each event in his deck. Our combo got blown up by like three cards in the entire game. And I figured, well, if he's going to have it, he's going to have it. I mean, he's running an event-heavy deck. There's 3 of them out there in the world. At the time, I was only thinking of two very generic event cancels. But Greyjoy does have a 3rd cancel called Seasick that cancels any effect unless the opponent kneels 1 influence. He had it. I tried to do the combo to blow him up. He canceled with Seasick. I went to look down to see if I had an influence, and instead of being in play for free, the Summer Sea with 1 influence was sitting in my hand. And I just sitting there, unable to cancel it for a very, very dumb mistake of not playing out my non-limited economy first to potentially stop a Seasick. A 1 in 75 card that I wasn't sure was in his deck, and was honestly just not even in my mind. If I'd done it in the draw phase when I couldn't have had a counter, like I wouldn't have been able to marshal the influence, I wouldn't have felt bad. I'd just say, oh, that those are the breaks. But the fact that the absolute saving card was in my hand and I should have played it first is what the seasickness comes from. So one of our SoCal guys, John Barber, pretty much every time I see him, he asks me if I'm feeling seasick or if I'm queasy. How are the waters? He made top 16 that year too with the Aw Yeah deck. So we have a bond in that way. There were 5 of us from SoCal that made the top 16 with that deck. We were all pretty proud of that one. But the furthest we could get was 3rd, and I feel like I let the team down on that one. I don't think there's any way I lose that game if I play the influence down to stop the Seasick.
Well,
it's not like any of us made it any further. So yeah, we can't.
Johnny got 4th. Johnny, the creator of the deck, John Wright, was in the other top 4 game and lost to Seth in probably our worst matchup. So John gets a good excuse where I don't have any excuse.
I mean, you were playing against Jakob. You could just have been distracted by his handsomeness. That's why.
There's a fantastic picture online of Jakob and I like shaking hands or something at that table, and there's a whole plethora of beautiful bearded men behind us. James Speck, Buzz, everyone there but Patrick. Everyone but Patrick Haynes has a nice, beautiful beard.
Yeah. That's a great picture. It's
That's one of my favorite pictures. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to John. So Buzz's research tells me that you are notoriously hard on new players. Why?
I am notoriously hard on new players. That's
Yeah.
what James is for.
Yeah.
I don't have a good brake pedal. Like I'm either on and I'm playing, or I just like I'm obviously throwing the game. So I pretty horribly teach new players how to play because I can't find that balance between, playing and not playing.
You generally go towards just smash them.
Well, I don't want to seem condescending.
Well, I mean, they're a new
letting
player,
them
right?
win.
And you've been playing since the CCG, right?
Yeah.
So should I get my 2.0 core set rule book and see if you were a playtester for the core set for 2.0? So
I actually wasn't for the core. I don't think.
I
Oh no, I was.
I thought we all
I
were.
was.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought
was,
like literally everyone who played
There were
1.0
so many
was
2.0, yeah.
I took a break in there somewhere.
We didn't do the first cycle. We did the core though.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, John, you don't have a good stick shift when it comes to training new players. All right. So, Ryan, you once made a man cry at Gen Con. True or false?
Not at the convention, but while we were there, yeah. And it's not my fault. He was a sad man already. We just highlighted it. I don't even know if that's a good story, but
hey, look, I'm not like Buzz did all the research here.
It makes me sound like I was the mean guy. We were just at a bar, and a guy was there with a bunch of women, and he looked like he shouldn't have been there with a bunch of women. But we were having a good time. James Speck and Alex Esposito and I were just dancing and being gregarious and having a good time with everyone. And he wasn't getting as much attention as he felt like he had bought. We kind of assumed. We assumed that he was like bankrolling the excursion. So he went outside on the front porch and cried. And then one of the girls had to go like rub his back, and everyone else just kept dancing. It was a weird thing.
It was weird.
Really uncomfortable.
It was like a $1 beer night in Indianapolis.
I mean,
I've only been to Indianapolis once, but apparently all the bars are amazing.
Was this when the World Championship was still at Gen Con?
No, this was the first year. It was just the North American Championship. The first year they moved Worlds.
Yeah.
And James and I got 17th and 18th in a cut to top 16. So we drank that night. We had some drinks. And they actually changed the tie-breaking rules because James should have been in. It was K-Tom, I think, that ruled that that one of the tiebreakers is head-to-head games, and that is like further down the tie-breaking list. A bunch of people were tied to get into the top 16, and then he used head-to-head games, not between two people that had played each other, but like a group of 10 people, and you would get a point if you beat anyone in that group of 10 people. So James didn't play anyone that ended up tied. He got no points. His strength of schedule was off the charts, and so he got boned. Like it was pretty crazy. So that led to all the partying. I mean, we probably would have partied anyway, but a special amount of partying.
So, John, what do you and Buzz have in common?
I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah,
are we both curmudgeon-y? Is that a thing?
It's melee related, says Buzz.
Oh, melee related.
Well, I know it. I know the answer.
Oh no.
I was there for one of them.
What,
You got boned.
Oh, by
by
DC.
the one.
Yeah, well,
There
that's
we
true.
go.
Probably the worst melee game ever played.
Yeah, yours was.
I thought that was the one with wasn't Jim Jim, one former New York player, like where he was playing Candy Crush while the DC combo decks were going off.
No,
was that
this
the same year.
No, this was the year before. Oh no, this was 2011. So yeah, it was Eric and Corey, and then myself, and then Greg at the final table, and they were playing Maester's Path, Martel Maester's Path, right? And so they would just do unopposed challenges at each other to get their chains off and load them up on a Maester and grab a bunch of power. And Greg was playing what was he playing? Knights of the Hollow Hill deck, and it was really slow and grindy. And so I probably should have started attacking Greg a lot sooner, just to mill power off of him, because my deck was pretty fast. But I knew I needed him to help me against the other two. So we just got steamrolled because of the shenanigans that went down.
Was that how we got House of Dreams?
That is how we got House of Dreams.
The only good thing to come out of that championship.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, sort of the last thing before we get into real serious. I mean, thanks to the Tyrell box and thanks to the third cycle, most people are familiar with your accomplishments in the game. But what has John done in his long sort of run? We know he's been at a Melee final table. What are some other things that John has accomplished in his time?
John also made a final table at a Joust World Championship.
There we go. That's good.
And he keeps saying he lucked into it, but you don't go that far without a good meta read, which John thinks he did on accident. But he he ran the Hyper Viper all the way up to the final match, and then immediately got stuck in the Lannisport brothel, and that was it, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
You basically just punted to Lannisport brothel, and you didn't see it until the finals. So
yeah, and it was my worst matchup.
I'm a huge believer in
was it Alvaro? No, who was?
No,
who did you?
Irwin. Alec Irwin.
Alec Irwin.
The Laughing Storm.
Oh, okay,
I think
Laughing Storm.
And I think it was Eric's deck. I think it was Butzloff's deck that he was playing.
Yeah.
He was playing with the GC deck or Wisconsin deck or whatever it was then.
There was no Wisconsin at that point.
Well, they're all from Wisconsin, so it gets very incestuous.
Yeah. It's hard to tell. But now there's no DC and only Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's Sam and Nick and their guys. But we'll get to DC, the great rivalry that the SoCal guys have. All right, so let's get the party really started. All right, so what is the SoCal drinking song?
Oh,
ooh. I don't have it memorized.
Yeah, it doesn't have a name. It's just the SoCal drinking shanty.
It's a shanty.
Can you sing it, Ryan? Can you sing it for us?
Probably not. Just a cappella here, solo. We're known to bust it out at post-tournament parties. I think Saturday night at Stolic there will probably be a little bit of shanty singing.
You should sing it as you walk in the room, as you guys enter into the hall. You should start singing it.
It's very post-tournament focused though. There's a bit about going 0-3 and scrubbing out and just drinking at that point. I don't know if we want to roll in with the idea of going 0-3. We just want to be okay with it when it happens.
Understandable. That's a good drinking song.
And 0-3 is perfect for Stolic because that's the moment you're out.
So I have a quote from Johnny Wright, wayward SoCal person, friend of the show. John and Spec and Alex are underrepresented for what they mean to us locally, in Johnny's opinion. No SoCal without John. How did the SoCal meta come to be, and how did both of you get introduced to Game of Thrones? Why don't we start with you, John? So since you played earlier than Ryan, how did you get drawn to the game?
So I have a friend that plays, he buys every card game, and he bought a lot of board games and stuff, and so he got me into Game of Thrones back in 2005. And I'd never really played any collectible card games before. I think I'd played a few games of Magic here and there and a few other games, but never really bought cards because I just didn't want to sink money into it. But when I played Thrones, I really, really liked it. I really enjoyed it, so I got into it. I played with his cards, I think, for about a year, and then I'm slowly getting my own collection going. And then I jumped in headfirst on the Iron Throne edition, the second to last block of the CCG. So I dove in there buying, booster boxes and everything. So I used to, back in the day, FFG actually had a good website, and they had player rankings on it. I can't remember if it was for different factions or if it was for different draft rankings or joust rankings. And John Bruno's name, anyway, his name was all over everything. And so I recognized his name and I knew his name. And I was playing with my friend, and I ended up getting some friends from Northern California interested in the game also. And it just so happened that they went to a tournament out in Sacramento, which had a good meta at the time. And John Bruno had driven up from Southern California up to this tournament in Sacramento, and he gave my friends all these cards and everything, and they came back super elated and totally happy that they'd met John Bruno, and he gave them all these cards and stuff. And so I decided that I was going to go out and meet him. I knew he played up in LA, and something cool that he did every year after Worlds, after Gen Con, that's when they released the new block of the cards for the new year. And he would always bring back he would, it took a few months before it was, available in stores, but he would bring them back from Gen Con and we'd all draft with them. And so I went up to his tournament for the Iron Throne block and drafted with him and met him for the first time. And there was a small meta of, I think, about maybe like 8 to 10 guys that played up there monthly, once a month on Saturdays. So did that for a while. And, CCG, LCG transition came. It was nice. I was happy actually that it was moving to an LCG model. I kind of liked the idea. I think it got mishandled a little bit, and everybody was disappointed to see
Why do you like the idea, John?
I just like the idea of not having to chase down rares. Yeah, I've been burned a few times. It was cool because everybody was really cool back in the CCG. I think you could put rare cards in the mail to people that you didn't even know, and and expect to make a trade with them. And I think I only got burnt maybe like one time out of the 10 or so times I was trying to swap rares with people.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
I don't think that would happen today.
No, I don't think so either. So I was excited for the LCG idea. Of everybody having access to the same cards and everything, especially because to that point I'd been playing with an incomplete set for so long because Valyrian edition was kind of rotating out, and it was still legal. It was still tournament legal at my first Gen Con, at my first Worlds, but I didn't want to buy into it too much because I knew it was going to rotate out fairly quickly. So I was really kind of playing with just Winter and Winter edition and Iron Throne. So I was happy when I heard about the LCG model. I was not happy that they rotated out Five Kings edition within, a few months of it coming out. So that was a little disappointing, but those are the breaks. So, I guess at that point, everybody quit playing down here except for me. There's a few guys up in Northern California still playing, but I was the only one down here. And it was a very lonely and sad time.
Oh.
Yeah. There was a few guys down here that would show up every now and then, but they weren't really buying cards. And eventually one day on the internet, I ran into, there's a guy named Joe that plays down here. He's never traveled with us anywhere, but I ran into him online, and I don't think we met up, but I knew who he was. We talked on the internet a few times. We just never met up. And then finally I ran into James online, and it clicked for us to be able to get together. And met James.
1 second, John. James who?
James Speck. Sorry, yeah. So I don't know. I'm a little socially awkward, so for me to show up to some stranger's house and play games with him, I was pretty desperate. So I made the trek up to where he was and met him, and we played, and doing a few things wrong. So I taught him how to play, and at that point we did some demos and stuff, and that's where we did demos at Kingdom Con. I can't remember what year that was that we did demos. It must have been 2008, 2009.
10.
I can't remember, but that's when
Kingdom Con 2010.
2010. Okay, so that's pretty late. So that's when Ryan and Alex were there. Ryan Jones and Alex Esposito. And luckily James got a hold of them. And he's the one who did the demos with them. Instead of me, yes. Although I think I did do some demos with some people that ended up showing up later, so that's not too bad. But yeah, James did the demos with them, and then they started coming out to our weekly tournaments and such. So it was just the four of us for a long time. We call ourselves the Wolf Pack. Yeah.
It's because John was running around the desert as a lone wolf, looking for a wolf pack, and then there were two. We also watched the first Hangover movie on our first road trip in my car up to Northern California, like an 8-hour drive. So that it kind of cemented us as the wolf pack.
As the wolf pack, yeah.
A lot of SoCal, there's a lot of mini sects in SoCals too. We also have Johnny Wright's Wrecking Crew. He brought about 4 guys in at one point, so. We don't really have like team shirts or anything. We probably should, but
yeah.
There's certainly faction hate within the SoCal group.
We have to keep ourselves entertained during store championship season and such.
That's true. Teams within teams, wheels within wheels, one might say.
Yes.
But before we get Ryan's sort of half of the story, so John, did you come purely from a card gaming perspective, or did you like the books and then that sort of was one of the reasons that hooked you, or did you go game book? Back to the game?
Yeah, I did game book. I knew nothing about the books. So I just started playing the game and really enjoyed the game, and then I started reading the books about a year after I was playing.
Cool. All right. So one of the that blows my mind. Like that's just because I'm not the kind of gamer who can play a game like and not like the theme. Like there's so many card games that people are like, oh, this is a great game, and I'm like, it's a bunch of anime people whacking each other. Like, no, I'm not going to do this.
I had played a couple card games. I just never really got into them because I didn't really like them. I didn't like building up econ, and so the idea of having a plot deck was just, I like that. I like being able to go right away.
Yeah. All right, Ryan, what's your part of the story? Take us up to the Fable Kingdom Con moment of meetup. So what brought you to want to go to Kingdom Con, and what did you find appealing about the game? What's your origin
Kingdom
story?
Con is actually run by one of my good friends, Ross Thompson. And so he's like in my pretty close meetup every week, just friend group. We drink, play board games, travel together. So he had this idea that San Diego was underserved in the board game convention area. Obviously, we have Comic-Con, but it's a very... He has kind of a boutique convention where we're in the couple of hundreds. At least when we started, it was 200 or 300 people, and I think they're pushing 1,000 now. So it's still a fun sort of close knit convention group. I actually wasn't going to go for very long, and I just decided to go into the board game room one day, just to go drive there, not get a hotel room or anything, just stay for one day. I was actually there demoing a plastic miniatures game called HeroScape, which nobody plays. Nobody played it then, and nobody plays it now. I went to one big tournament, actually. There was about 40 people, and then there was nothing else organized after that, so it just died. But no one wanted to play it, so that lasted for about 2 hours. So the guys right behind us were John and James demoing Game of Thrones, and my buddy Alex. And I just got caught up in a game of Melee, and I played Baratheon, and there was only 2 dupes in the core set. We're just doing core set decks, and there were 2 Robert Baratheons and 2 of the dragon that duped himself, maybe Rhaegal.
Rhaegal, yeah.
Yeah. So I got to play the Baratheon deck. I duped Robert early, and then the Stark player. They gave Stark the Valor, even though it was the murder deck. And so the Stark player just decided to Valor out of nowhere, and then I ran over the board with the double renown Robert, because nobody had any characters after that. I just kept doing unopposed challenges with double renown, and I was like, this game's awesome. I love winning. Like, I want to play Baratheon all the time. Who's this guy, Robert Baratheon? I like him. I hadn't read the books. I didn't know anything about the theme. I probably played the game for about 6 months before I even read the first book. I had a ton of stuff spoiled for me, like really, really bad. About half of it from people. Oh yeah, Red Wedding, Heads on Spikes from first edition. I kept looking at it. And I was like, whose head is that? And then just one day I was just sitting there, I was about halfway through the book at that point, and I went, oh shit, I know who that is. And his head is not yet on a spike. And then the next chapter I read, it was that guy got his head on a spike. Also, I'm You Writ Small. That was a tough one, because that's like 2 more books.
Yeah. Don't read the flavor text. The flavor text is bad if you don't want spoilers.
Oh yeah, Demon's Dance. The flavor text is, "You killed my son," like, and the picture is of someone who has a son. You're like, oh, well, I guess one of her sons dies. So if you're watching this, you probably need to not get spoilers anyway. But
so in both of your origin stories, you guys dropped in on a lot of names: Bruno, Spec, all these other people, Johnny. So who are the personalities, besides obviously the 2 of you, that people in the community should associate with SoCal?
Bruno's a huge one. Like, and maybe that's a little bit older. It's funny that he's kind of had 2 huge runs, but they've been separated now by 2 pretty big breaks. John could probably talk about his first run he got the world championship in 2006?
2005.
Oh,
so it was right.
It
was right as I was starting to play, but I hadn't met him yet. So
that gave us first snow.
First snow.
Yeah, that was first snow. And then he took a break when it switched to the LCG. He started coaching cheerleading at the time, and so he was too busy doing that to play cards. But eventually, the LCG card pool built up enough to where he came back out. So. But yeah, if I'm the grandfather of SoCal Thrones, he's definitely the great grandfather of SoCal Thrones.
I see him as the Godfather because he can be.
He's the mythic founder.
That's even better.
The Romulus or
he's the
Remus
Godfather
of Thrones in Southern California.
For sure. And then if you want other old time players, it's John Bruno's muse. It's the person he gets all of his ideas from. Would be Ram De Leon, So I don't know if you guys know him, but he played a long time ago. He hasn't played second edition, but he played a lot of 1.0 also.
He lost to Kid Seafelt in that 2012 Gen Con in the finals.
Yeah.
It was Stark Winter versus Greyjoy Winter, and that was for a card design. I think that was Kid's first card. So Ram was one win away from that as well. We had a pretty good run of second place finishes, which I'm glad we kind of nipped that in the bud a little bit. But
yeah, Kid likes to remind us that he went through all three of us that year. I think he went through me first, and then Bruno, and then Ram. Yeah. So
his deck had a great matchup against that Martel Maester deck.
Yeah.
It was like the only thing that had a good matchup against it.
Yeah. So
we got Bruno and Ram. So who else? Who is Johnny Wright? Who is this person that you hear about all the time? Who's Johnny Wright?
Johnny Wright is the guy who stole my crown as the person known to play Martel. So I used to be the guy who played Martel all the time, and then he showed up and he's way better than me, and he's way better, and he understands Martel 2.0 much more than I do. So he can have that crown for now. I'll get better one day. But yeah.
Johnny joined, I think, probably 2 or 3 years after me. I think it was a connection through Chris Schoenthal, who's another big SoCal name.
Never heard of him.
He's a second son, yeah. Chris went to school with him here locally, and then Johnny also brought a couple other guys that he went to school with into the fold. They're not quite as active as Johnny is. Johnny's an every week kind of guy, and then his buddies Aaron Freeberg and Jeff Kane are once a month. During peak times, maybe once a week. But that group has been really successful. They do a lot of great deck building together, imaginative stuff. I'm always in awe of people that can build a creative deck, because I cannot. So he's probably one of our most creative deck builders, Johnny Wright is, and also very very successful at playing as well. I think he's probably the first or second best player in SoCal. So.
Wow, that's high praise.
Yeah, for some reason he doesn't get the results that his skill should be giving him. I think he's also very unlucky. He can be really good and really unlucky. So
yeah,
I think he's a little bit of both.
I think a lot of metas have that. Like Dan Struhall in New York is somebody who doesn't have a card design, but probably should have one.
So good.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I hate playing Dan.
Johnny's the guy that we turn to when we're like, what's going on with the meta right now? What's going on with the card pool? Fill us in, Johnny, because he's the guy who knows. So
he actually reminds me a lot of Dan. Johnny may just be our Dan Struhall. I'd never made that connection, but that's a good one.
So any other? James Speck. Who's James Speck? He's come up a lot. So and I like James. So tell us all about James.
In my opinion, James Speck is the embodiment of SoCal Thrones. Like he's the player archetype that I want everybody to be like, just because he is so nice and so, like I said, he's the best guy. If a new person is going to come into our meta, we stick James on him right away, because he's the best person to introduce new players to the game.
If anyone's going to get the new guy to stick, it's going to be James.
Yeah, for sure. And if you want that balance between friendliness and competitiveness and seriousness, it's James Speck. So.
And partiness.
And partiness, yes.
I mean, we learned the shots for plots at Thrones War 2000 this year, right? So 2017.
Yeah.
I think James has taken over the mantle for me, because I've slowed down a little bit, and James has not. So I'd give him the title of Party King in SoCal.
In SoCal, is he part of Team USA, or is he also staying in?
I'm making it like my personal responsibility to keep him healthy and whole while we're in Germany, because I know I'll be there right next to him, but I feel like I'll have a little bit better wits about me and
a little bit more coherence.
I'd like him to keep playing Thrones and being in our lives, and I feel like there's a chance that would stop happening.
Not falling down the stairs of death, which
I've seen YouTube videos. I'm not excited about that. So.
Well, I learned in banter that you can take the road. It's an extra 20-minute walk, but you can take the road. That's what I learned listening to banter behind the throne today. So any other personalities that you want to shout out here before we move on to the next topic.
Well, we didn't talk about Chris a ton. I feel like a lot of people know him. He won a thing. He has a card design now. It's really good for him. He really wanted one of those. He was sad that he didn't have one for a really long time. So now
he was itching.
Out of everyone in SoCal, I think he was pining the hardest, honestly.
Chris is our competitive lifeblood. When we get all loosey goosey, he's the one who wants us to tighten it up.
And there's one more guy that I don't want to talk about.
The most, right?
He's our secret weapon.
Yeah.
Who's your secret weapon?
I'll just give you a name. His name's Kevin Shannon, and he is quietly by far the best player in San Diego and
best
SoCal, and I would probably say in California.
Best Baratheon player in the world, right?
Best Baratheon player in the world. That's a great running joke for him. He was the Baratheon Throneswar King this year, so I think that just, the Rock
and the champion. So
he's the back-to-back individual Throneswar champion of the last 2 years, and Johnny Wright before that. So I kind of put them 1 and 2 at the premier tournament. It's all about what you do when you show up to the premier tournament. James Speck won the regional 2 years ago, and Kevin won it this year, so that's okay as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, so
let's
talk. Oh, go ahead.
We could also probably mention Sid, but he was from Northern California when he started playing the game, and so I've been down in Southern California maybe the past, I don't know how many years, so he's still working his way in.
He does have a shirt. He wears it on Second Son, so.
Yeah. All right, then I guess he's SoCal.
And he was sitting in the SoCal Cool Kids table at Worlds, so I think that counts, right?
When I lived up in Northern California, I was friends with him, so I've welcomed him with open arms. Other people, I don't know.
Johnny's the only one. Sid's fine. He's just fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about this because these people, Kid, Corey, Seth, have all come up. So the classic 1.0 rivalry is East Coast versus West Coast, SoCal versus DC. So how did that, from the SoCal perspective, how did that rivalry play out? Was it a rivalry? What is the SoCal take on this classic, good guys in Southern California versus the bad guys operating out of Corey's kitchen table in our nation's capital?
Damn that kitchen table.
I don't want to get started.
Yeah, that's what this is for.
I'm afraid
they don't even play anymore.
I have to leave tomorrow morning at 9, so I don't know if
I'm afraid of where it might go.
Well, give us the Cliff Notes version, John.
Cliff Notes version. I don't know. I don't know where to start. 2009, I did not go to Worlds, right? And I think Eric won overall that year. That's where the Blackfish card design came out of, which is overall at Worlds in 2009. So 2010, that's I went back out to Worlds. Things happened. There was rumors going around that maybe the top players were being sniped at melee tables, and hearing stories from some of the other top players about why somebody was doing certain things to them and just wouldn't let them go when they were clearly out of it and not going to place well at the table. And then I think later on in the day we all put the pieces together and maybe figured out what was going on, and so that happened and
led to the collusion rules in the 1.0 melee rule book.
Well, after that melee final in 2011, FFG did decide to add about 5 pages of how not to be a jerk to the FAQ, and I think
they didn't have to before that. There wasn't a need to do that before.
They didn't have to, and I think Eric probably put them on the floor and rolled around in them happily and was super ecstatic. I mean,
like some Scrooge McDuck.
For sure. After that melee, so that the melee in 2011 is where I began to realize what was going on with these shenanigans, and I was sitting at that final table, and I told myself, well, one of these two guys is probably going to win because they're going to work together. They probably have Valors and they probably have Power of Bloods to be able to protect their Vipers and stuff, which they did, and they alternated them perfectly. I don't know how that happened.
Without any verbal cues,
no verbal cues whatsoever. Yeah, it happened. But I sat down and I decided, well, if one of these two guys is going to win, I'm going to make sure it's not Eric, because I knew Eric at the time and he had a reputation. I didn't know Corey that well, but so I didn't. I tried to win. I tried to do my best, but if I wasn't going to win, I was going to make sure it wasn't Eric for sure. So Corey won that one, and afterwards I remember talking to Eric, and he made some comment about hopefully we showed FFG how bad their melee rules are and that they need to fix things. Anyway, that was their goal in life, was to show FFG how broken things were and how they could fix it, or they could show them like the error of their ways.
Look how big of dicks we can be because you didn't write rules that say don't be dicks. So then they had to write them.
Yeah.
Everyone else just said, hey, they didn't write it, but let's not be dicks. So there's just a different take on that. Like, and honestly, we talk about the DC SoCal rivalry, but it feels like it was DC versus the world. We just happen to be another big group. Like, most of the people are law-abiding, well-wishing citizens, and they're not. So that's the big difference, It's good versus evil.
Yeah, I think at that point we were definitely we understood that there were unwritten rules. We played by unwritten rules, and they definitely were of the mindset that if it's not written down, it's not really a rule, and we can do whatever we want. So,
and I see that approach. Like, I'm not completely against that, but I think we could have been okay as a community if we'd never had to write those.
Yeah.
But now they're written.
Then there were some online shenanigans too. I believe there was was it a honeymoon letter, or there was some letter that Eric Butzlaff wrote all of SoCal from his honeymoon on the beaches of Hawaii. He took the time out to think about us. And
it was like 4 or 5 pages long.
Yeah. It was like a Facebook instant message. I think we have it copied somewhere.
It was public. No, he made it on his wall. Like,
oh, did he? Yeah, it was
there
wonderful
for everyone to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Calling you guys out on his honeymoon.
He called Chris Schoenthal a pretender, and then John Bruno like a hack, and John Krause something else. It was pretty fantastic.
Yeah. I think he said like would Ram ever break the glass ceiling of second place or whatever, something like that. And I remember Sid was happy that he just got mentioned in the email at all. So that was pretty great. So, but yeah, it was just a difference of mindsets. I mean, we're a pretty competitive meta. We want to play. We want to play seriously. We want to win too. But that doesn't mean that you have to push out being nice to people, and being cordial. And to their credit, not all of DC's like that. I mean, they're pretty good guys, but Eric definitely wanted to wear that black hat because
he loved it.
I think he loved it.
Pieces for his gold, like
yeah. And I don't think it was because I don't think it's because he's necessarily a jerk. I just it was part of the competitive advantage for him to be like that, and he wore it with pride.
Advanced tilting your opponent.
Oh yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, didn't Bruno prevent Eric from getting a card design once when he won the Med King?
That was the best year ever. 2012 Worlds.
Yes.
So it was the revenge for 2011, right?
Burnt all their asses round after round after round. There were 2 of us or I guess there were a couple more of us, but Bruno and I were both playing the Target Hollow Hill deck, so I went 4-2 and missed it because I lost to Bruno in the last round. And I was like, okay, Bruno, if you're going to beat me in the playing game, now you got to beat all their asses. And there's another part of it that that year they had maybe 20 folks there from their team, and they were after every match, everyone would report what Bruno's plots were, what his draw deck cards were, and they had a physical piece of paper. I assume they ended up with every single card in his draw deck and obviously all of his plots. And so anyone that would go into Bruno's game would have now the FFG rule of here's his deck list. But and to be fair, they were all playing the exact same Stark Winter deck. And he kept playing them and beating them. So he ended up knowing all their cards too. It's just he did it legal. I don't even know if it was a rule. Maybe they're just trying to get more rules written.
He had to play 3 of them in the cut, I think.
Yeah, and plus a 4th Stark player, the guy who got overall, Shoemaker.
Yeah,
he was playing Stark Knights, and I watched Bruno burn that to crap too. Like, it was such a good matchup for Bruno, and they all did fantastically well. They're fantastic players. They're really great deck builders. So a bunch of them were in the top 16. And he just kept knocking them down. And then in the finals match, it's not even a game. Like, Bruno just destroys Eric. And Eric's on tilt too. He makes a couple really big mistakes, and Bruno was just smiling the whole time. I was front row, and I was like, I can't believe that this is my dream. And so that was the fun retribution. That was Bruno's first year back too. Like,
Yeah.
there were a lot of cards to catch up on, and he just made this probably. I think most people would agree it's one of the best decks from first edition, and caused like 5 cards to get restricted right after it. It was out of nowhere, and it was such a great run and great deck.
Especially since that was the day following the big melee DQ, right?
Where 3 of them got disqualified
From the
first
night
go.
before. Yeah.
Justice, sweet justice.
That was the year someone won the melee title by default, right? Because the other 3 people
There were 3 DC guys, and then
was,
a 4th French guy, Matthew, I think.
Matthew, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Which, to be fair, I don't necessarily agree with the way they got disqualified, but I do think that was like a 3-year buildup of like FFG just being done with them. And so,
Dennis was one of the people, right? That got DQ'd.
Yeah. Dennis, Eric, and either Chad
Aaron?
or Jamnik.
Was it Chad or Aaron?
Baumgartner. I don't think it was.
I don't think it was Aaron. Okay. It was the pre-Seth days, right? So
it was.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The DC rivalry kind of died down once Eric left. I think John's right that a lot of it just came down from Eric. Like, Corey's always been cool. Corey's a cool guy. He's really quiet too, so he could just be awful and no one would know. But at least he keeps it inside. Like, Eric lets all of his awfulness out, so it's easy to pinpoint him and put a target on him. But if Corey's bad, he keeps it quiet. And he keeps.
When Corey was running the show, it was much chiller than when Eric was, right?
Yeah.
So that was my DC experience with Corey, who I like a great deal. So.
Oh yeah.
All right. So, what's next on Buzz's list? Okay. So, how big is SoCal now? So, how big are you, having weathered the CCG transition, and now there's been another transition? How's 2.0 treating the meta for you guys? The game, like the community meta, not the.
Yeah, San Diego's probably like there's been metas that pop up here and there in LA, but San Diego's probably the big meta that's formed and stayed together for years now. We usually don't go below 8, but I mean right now we probably have 15, 16 people that'll show up. Yeah, weekly. So we have a pretty good group. There are other groups up in LA. They're a little more spread out, and it's hard for them to get together with traffic and everything. So.
It's a big land mass. Even though they're all in LA, they could be an hour and a half away from each other.
Ugh.
Yeah.
LA.
So I remember one point when 2.0 came out. I mean, we were running weekly leagues, and we were hitting. I think we were in the upper 20s for people coming out. It's died down since, but that was probably the peak of everything.
How big was your regional this year? Because San Diego had one, right?
Yeah, we got one.
Our home store had one for the first time. At games. It was fantastic.
It was so nice. Yes, I think we were at low 40s.
I remembered about 45.
Yeah, that's for 2017. That's right up there in the top end of things. So, because the biggest was 50. So.
Yeah.
And our game store is attached to a beer tasting taste room. Taste room.
That's nice. That's
just
really
like there's a pass-through door, like it's not just next door to it, like it's named the same, it's connected, it's run by the same people.
That's really nice.
That made the 2-day regional this year pretty fantastic because we had people stay from like Vegas and San Francisco that probably wouldn't have stayed because they wanted to stay for day 2. We got to party more.
Yeah, we got one of the super regionals, and I think initially people were a little conflicted because a lot of the LA players thought it was too close to want to get a hotel, but too far away to travel down on Saturday and then come back the next day for the cut and the melee. But ultimately, I think it ended up working out really well because we were able to finish the Swiss rounds of Joust early on Saturday, and it gave everybody a lot of time to hang out Saturday night and get to know each other. That was pretty awesome. And then the melee on Sunday morning was pretty fun too. So.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So speaking of tournaments, you guys are pretty well known for what? 4 long-running tournaments: Kubla Khan, Siege of Highgarden, Thrones War, Kingdom Con. So tell me all about them. I mean, I have personal experience with Thrones War, and I think that's probably the most famous. But what's the tournament scene like in California? And tell me a little bit about some of these big names that players throughout the world may have heard of. We'll leave Thrones War for last because that's
Okay, maybe I'll do some history here. Back in the CCG, there were regionals, and we used to consistently have a Northern California regional and a Southern California regional, and John Bruno ran both of them. So the Southern California one, he ran, I think he ran it even at Gen Con SoCal, maybe 1 year, or maybe FFG did that. I can't remember, but he would run it at a store down here after Gen Con SoCal went away. So he had that, and then Northern California, the regional there was always run out of KublaCon, which is a convention in San Francisco. And so, from there, I think there was a tournament that there's a meta up there. They were really old back in the CCG called Sacktown Mafia. They've now died off, and there's no more of them playing. Jesse Mariona, he's a hangover from the old Sacktown Mafia. But they had kind of a tournament that they would run every now and then, and we kind of usurped it once we started playing, and we had CaliCon. So Sid started running CaliCon up in the Bay Area. And so that was a tournament up there. We had down here Kingdom Con. Obviously, James and I, we were demoing at the Kingdom Con. It was kind of like the birthplace where we found new people to play with. And so I've run that tournament for the past 7-ish years. It was a regional at one point, and then FFG made the decision that they wanted to move regionals away from conventions and such. So we lost it due to no fault of our own. But we still have a pretty good tournament going there every year. Now it's kind of like a regional warm-up tournament to get ready for a regional season. So, and then last one I think is probably Thrones War, unless we want to talk about Kubla more. But
Kubla is my favorite weekend of the year. It's always on Memorial Day weekend. It's always got really good Thrones tournament numbers. I usually do really well at it. Like there's a lot of reasons I love it. But it's great to see all the NorCal guys like on their home turf because they travel really well. They all come down for Kingdom Con, Thrones War, usually a regional. And now that there's Battle of Bravos and Siege of Highgarden, there's some more stuff for us to go up to. But classically, KublaCon was our one pilgrimage north to sort of repay the favor of all their traveling. So it holds a special part in my heart. I wish I'd bought the lifetime pass, which ended last year. Chris Schoenthal got one of the very last lifetime passes. It's like $600. You have to survive like 20 more years to make it pay off. I'm not willing to make that gamble, so I decided I'll just keep paying yearly. He and Matt Lay both have lifetime passes. So.
Well, Matt Lay's been going to KublaCon since like,
before
forever.
My time.
Yeah, like
I mean, honestly, my first KublaCon, I went there, and I think Danny or Chaos, I don't know who, maybe old people from the CCG remember Danny, but I think he got paired against Matt Lay like first round and had to play him, and so he was there that first year. He goes out there every year.
Yeah, infamously, right? So Thrones War, that's sort of the big one now, right? That's sort of the center of gravity, I think, a little bit.
You mean in like North America, or?
Well, I mean in North America, it's going to be the biggest non-continental championship, right? This year, probably, based on initial interest, right? Just shy of.
It already was for 2017. We had 67.
67, yeah. So, and 2018, you're going to have 20-ish more people, right? It seems, maybe more.
They're about, probably maybe a little more.
Yeah.
Johnny thinks we're going to hit 100. I don't know about that, but if it goes above 100, I need to find a new place to hold it. That's my worry. I'll talk a little bit about why Thrones War exists because it's a big part of the SoCal history as well. John mentioned not a convention, a house party / joust and melee tournament called CaliCon that was run for several years up near San Francisco. It was the very first Thrones traveling I did with John, James Speck, and Alex Esposito. I don't know how John convinced us to drive 8 hours to go play this card game tournament. I'd never played a card game tournament in my life, and somehow I just said, yeah, and I'll drive. No big deal. Although John drove some of it. John drives very fast. I don't let John drive my car anymore. So that CaliCon was so much fun, meeting all the NorCal guys and drinking Capri Sun with Grey Goose and weird stuff like that. Playing Robo Rally with 9 drunk people and 1 sober Kraus was very, very fun. It was one of the best weekends of my life, and I was like, all right, these are my people. I've found my spot, and I think without that CaliCon trip, I may have burnt out of Thrones at some point. But like that's always stuck in my mind as such a great community event. When the NorCal group kind of died down, they stopped running that, and so we had a bunch of people from LA and San Diego and Sacramento that still wanted to get together, still wanted to have more traveling, more hanging out. So I said we should make a CaliCon in SoCal, and we all agreed that it should just be the same sort of thing: a house party, host everyone, put up air mattresses, drink all night, sling cards in the morning. And I have a blessed to have a big enough house to, at the time, support everyone. I think our first one might have been 19 or 22, something like that. And it was very easy to fit everybody here and host all the travelers here, big man piles and all that stuff. So the first year of Thrones War was just a standard joust, standard. I don't even think we did a melee. I think we did a draft. Yeah. We've got sort of an aversion. There's sects here in SoCal that have a melee aversion. And at the time, I think I was drinking that Kool-Aid. Yeah, show and tell is a big one. So we did a draft, I think, a CCG draft, and then a joust. And John Bruno won the first one. He's amazing. And then it sort of that just became sort of a February landmark on the Thrones year for California. And there wasn't really a big enough group to worry about opening it up to the public. It was just, we just talked to our California friends and say, come down this weekend and we'll hang out. We did that for about 3 years. And then last year was the first year that, 2 years ago, we hit 32, and I had to cap it at 32 because we were doing a new format where we'd have one person representing each faction, and everyone would draft players to fill in their teams, and then everyone on the same team would run the same faction. Then at the end of the tournament, we could see which faction had the most wins and sort of award a team-based prize and the individual prize at the same time. That idea came about on a walk around a local lake with James Speck and I. We were trying to figure out how do we make players that are perennially on the bottom half of the ladder stay interested in a tournament, like a reason not to drop when you're 0-2, a reason to want to play every single round beyond just your own success. And we came up with, well, let's make everyone's wins every single round count towards a greater cause. And I think it's worked well in that way. I think it's unique in that way that, no one has ever dropped from a Thrones War since we've done that. If they do, I'd probably get banned for life. So there's also that. I wield the ban hammer. I have actually banned two people from Thrones War. They both had a 364-day ban, so they were able to come the next year. But I made it publicly known that because they let down their teams. The very first year we did teams.
Tiny Grimes is one, right?
Tiny Grimes and Angela Steele, one of the Sacktown ladies. They both, for different reasons, couldn't make it. Oh, and Ben Tully. So three of them. It was kind of disappointing. I had to merge two teams. I had one team with 2 people, another team with 3, including one I was on. So we just merged the 2 teams to make a team of 4 and dropped the middle score. I like how we rolled with it, but it was disappointing to, have that. And last year, we had three people not show up, but I have a better system now for handling.
Yeah, the dummy players, right?
Yeah. Still evolving, but I think the uniqueness is why people want to come to it. And every decision I've ever made for it, there's a lot of times where I can choose between making it a more like streamlined, clear-cut competitive tournament, or keep it friendly to every single person who's there, make it more about a community building event. And I'd say 90% of the time I've decided that this is a community building event first and foremost, and our very strong-willed competitive people that I look for advice from that say, no, it should be this to be a perfect simulation of a perfect meta with all these things. I say, it's not for that. It's about showing everyone in the community a good time, hooking them into the game so they'll play all year long, not just at Thrones War. If we just make it just another, everyone at the top gets all the prizes, or everyone at the top gets all the glory, like we have so many of those tournaments every month. We don't need another standard joust. It was my thought. So
yeah, it's a good
that's
point.
why I think people like it so much, is everyone's in it. Everyone's getting stuff. Everyone's sharing the glory and the defeat as a team, which doesn't happen in normal Thrones unless you're DC. Full circle.
Yeah. Thrones War was an amazing experience, and I'm going again this year. So it's going to be. I'm looking forward to it. So the next thing. So moving sort of a little bit into sort of what it's like to be a SoCal player. When you first went to a big tournament, or when you go to a big tournament like Worlds or Gen Con or something like that, or Stolic, which you don't quite know yet, but what strikes you as different about the broader meta than what goes on in California?
They play more Melee. That's definitely number one thing. Not all of us hate Melee, but none of us play Melee. Like the year I won the Melee championship, I built that deck in the hotel room, and we did one warm-up game before the tournament, and all three other players used their Joust decks, so I could do a rep with my Melee deck.
And that was probably
John ended up winning.
That was probably your second Melee game of the year.
Yeah. I love Melee. I'm good at it. I'm good at convincing people that I'm saying the right thing. So it suits my skills, but we just don't do casual Melee, even though casual Melee is so much better than competitive Melee. We just don't do it. There are metas that only do Melee, and that blows my mind. Even in California, the Chico meta is known to just abhor Joust and only play Melee.
Yeah, and for years in the CCG, I played Joust competitively, but Melee was always my favorite format. I enjoyed it so much. I felt it represented the books more, with the deal making and the backstabbing and all of that. So I loved it. Then I probably got a little too competitive with it, and I think that spoiled it for me. I still like it, but the sour taste shows up in my mouth every time I play.
Well, a little bird told me that how many of you SoCal guys are going to be at Stolic? Is it 8? 6? And 5 of you are playing in the Melee, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Everyone but Chris.
I
don't know what he's going to do. He'll probably...
I told him, like, if there's a time to play Melee, it's Stolic, right? Like, apparently that's the platonic ideal of how Melee should be played competitively.
Yeah, I'm really excited to play my first European Melee, honestly. Like, it's the way it should be played by far. So hopefully don't disappoint me in that way.
Well, Stolic's a good transition for this. So for, again, these big national, international tournaments like Worlds and Stolic and Gen Con, how do you guys prepare? Do you prepare as a group, or are you all a bunch of sort of lone wolves that sort of come together as friends, or is it a more sort of there's a SoCal deck that is generally played by most of your players?
We definitely don't have a SoCal deck whenever we go. The one exception was 2015 when we had the Lanny Aloof and Apart deck that was undeniably fantastic and unfair, and we were pretty sure just everyone was going to make the top 16. And it kind of bared out that of like maybe 8 of us or 9 of us that brought it, 6 of us got in the top 16, and a bunch of people were 5-2, just missing the cut. So we're not against all bringing the same thing if someone can absolutely destroy the meta. Most of the times that's pretty hard to come by, and hopefully for the good of the game, that's not really ever a thing. I'd like to see deck variety, and that really leads us to make individual decisions almost every time. Johnny Wright builds a lot of decks these days, and he's very open. Once we're past the SoCal on SoCal hate during regional season, Johnny's very open with his decks with us. He's a big, like I said before, I'm always in awe of creative deck builders, and he's one of the best. So I'm never one to turn down a Johnny Wright deck. But I'd say if there's like 6 of us going, we'll have 4 to 5 decks, maybe 3 to 4 decks amongst the 6 of us. You certainly won't be hearing at the tournament, oh, what are the SoCal guys playing? Because it's probably 4 or 5 different houses amongst what we're playing.
Yeah. I think it's played out maybe in the past couple of years where there's been more of us on the same deck than in the past. But mostly for me, speaking for myself, I haven't really been deck building a lot lately. Maybe the past few years, I haven't really felt on my game deck building, and so I played the same deck as Bruno one year, the All Yeah deck. I think I played this a deck that Johnny was rolling for Worlds this year, and there was a couple of us playing it with. Well, we always have minor variations in it, but I think
That's
what
true.
Ryan said. I think
There's
what
never
Ryan
one
says is
list
true.
either.
Yeah, we all have our own flavor that we want to have, and I think we all have our own play styles, and we recognize that. And I think we feel more comfortable playing a deck that we've played a lot and that we enjoy more so than something that's a good, that maybe is the top deck.
Yeah, I'd always rather take a heavy reps deck, even if it was subpar, than something that's the best deck in the meta that I've played maybe 1 or 2 times. I'll always do better with something I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
Okay. So going back to sort of my previous question, sort of a different version of it. So a new player just moved to San Diego from, I don't know, Norway or wherever. They arrive at a game night. What is the experience of a game night or a league night at SoCal? What's it like? What are new players gonna find showing up at a SoCal event?
Well,
John?
I don't know. Usually we have pretty open play. Every other quarter of the year, I run something different. So during winter and summer, we have our winter league and our summer league. So that's usually a pretty fun environment for, I think, new players because I do achievements, right? So they can play whatever deck they want. And some players get into the achievements pretty strongly. They like to go after those. That way they don't have to rack up the wins to score for the actual league itself, but they can go after achievements on the back. So we usually try to get James to give them a demo game if they haven't played before. If they have played before, we just start playing with them, right? We want them to sit down at the table, hang out with us. We have a diner down in San Diego, studio diner. We go to it usually every night. Every Thursday we go there at 11 o'clock from like 11 to 1. So our Thrones night on Thursday night at the store starts at like 4:30 for me, and the store closes at 11. Most guys get there around 6:30, but we're there until 11, and then we go to the diner afterwards, and I don't get home till 1:30. So
that's nice.
And that all comes from back in the days when it was just a wolf pack, when it was the 4 of us. We needed a little variety in our lives, so we used to have the burger tourney, which was basically a way to it was a way for me to con Ryan and James and Alex out of their money to pay for my food at the diner, because they were new to the game and I was more experienced, and so I could win some free food off of them.
It was just a 4-player round robin, right? Everyone plays each other one time, and losers buy the winner's burger.
Yep. So it's just something for us to do.
I was really bad. John used to beat the crap out of me for the first 2.5 years that I played. I was I almost quit. I was like, I don't know how to win games of this. And then I realized that everyone in our group was really, really good. And I was like, okay, it's just, I'm good. I'm just not better than my local group.
Awkwardly enough, that was probably at my peak of my prime of Thrones play. So that was a good time to join.
So related to that, what recommendations do you guys have for other metas that want to attract new players, or for somebody who is a lone wolf right now who wants to find their wolf pack? What sort of advice do you have?
I think if you're by yourself, it's hard. I think it took 1.5 years to get anything going, and nothing really got going until I found James. And I think at that point, having 2 of us, it enabled us to be able to meet at a common place at a common time every week. We could be there consistently, and people coming through the store saw that. And then James is a go-getter, so him being tied in with Kingdom Con and doing the legwork to be able to get us in there to do demos. It's work. We had to do work. We just went out and did demos, and that got more people in, and that built up the group, and consistently meeting again, and the group was growing. And I think once we got the 4 of us, it just started growing from there. I can't remember if we did a tournament the next year at Kingdom Con or if we did demos again, but I think by that time we were
the very next years we did.
Yeah, well, we were rolling at that point.
Bruno came back. Yeah.
So that consistency in meeting on a regular basis in a regular spot, so that people can know you're going to be there, and then just putting in the work of getting the word out. Being friendly. Not everybody has to be your best friend, but they can be. They have that potential, right? And there's nothing wrong with being nice to people. So, win or lose, I'm not the best at teaching people because, like I said, I can't take my foot off the gas pedal very well.
You gotta find a James. What he's saying. Find a James.
Find a James back. But yeah.
I second the consistency of, like, we used to be on Tuesdays, and it was just every single Tuesday, 6 p.m., rain or shine. It may be like once or twice a year, Christmas, maybe Thanksgiving. We just would cancel it, but someone would be there every single week at the same game store at the exact same time every single week. And I think John's right, like that. Even if you were out of the loop for like a couple months, you could just show up on a Tuesday at our game store at 6 o'clock, and you'd be able to play cards like that. That solidity, I think, is a big part of why we are where we are.
Yeah.
Okay. Related to that, you guys, as overall, in my experience, at least with Southern California guys, is you all seem to relatively get along. So what does Southern California do to sort of starve off toxicity, encourage inclusiveness between sort of people with a car design and the 2-0 scrubs who are to drop to drink? So, apparently in Buzz's research, he's uncovered histories about guys skipping on the note and some amazing flyers that you guys have done. So what sort of things do you do to sort of keep the top end and the lower end of your bell curve of players all getting along, all feeling like they're part of the same community?
I mean, for me, it's just talking to people and being nice. I mean, I was blown away. Like I said, when I started this game, John Bruno's name was all over FFG's webpage for being the best player. And the fact that he reached out to me and reached out to my friends and gave them cards and so was so nice and welcoming to them, and he was the world champion, and just Greg and Matt Lay, those three, they're the nicest guys in the world, and they were very welcoming to me, and I was a scrub, and I just appreciated it, and so I always kind of wanted to get that going for anybody that I introduced the game to. I just wanted to make sure that they felt like they could have fun and that they could enjoy themselves even if they were losing. I mean, it sucks to go to tournaments and lose all the time, and there are people who do that, right? But they got to have a fun time too. They're an important part of the community. If you're a jerk and you push people away, having nobody to play with sucks. I did it for a year and a half. I didn't push everybody away. It wasn't me who did it. It was the the transition. It was the transition to the LCG that kind of did it. But it sucks not having people around. So just be nice and welcoming people. Right. We have some good personalities too. James and Ryan are pretty warm, inviting characters. So that helps.
I think, like John said, no one wants to show up at a tournament and lose the whole time. I think it's important to emphasize something else beyond the game. The camaraderie, the friendship, going out to we go out to the diner every Thursday, like John said. It's not just the winners that go out to the diner. Everyone goes out to the diner, so you can show up on a Thursday and you may not be guaranteed to win a single game, but you're guaranteed to have a fun evening. I guess it's kind of a late night at this fantastic diner that we always go to. And, we talked about it already, but the Thrones War tournament structure includes a lot of people in that way. I talked about it also, but we really like to party, and we like to play board games with each other after tournaments or before tournaments. John and I get together to play board games a couple times a year, maybe more than that, and just not even talk about Thrones. Like, you can have a friendship and a relationship that goes beyond the tournament scene, beyond winning and losing, with the cards. This is a fine game. I think it's one of the best games ever made, but I don't think I'd be playing this for 8 years straight if I didn't love all these guys and if they weren't some of the best friends I've ever made in my entire life. That's the thing that is tough. It's incredibly tough to have happen, but when it does, I think that's it. You've got it, and you're probably never going to give it up. Like, I was moaning about something with the game to Johnny Wright, and I was like, are we even going to play? What are we going to do in 10 years when the game dies because of this mechanic or that? And John said, well, won't we just find another game? Like, we're all going to play games together until we die, right? And I was like, oh, that's really sweet, Johnny. Like, I'd love to do that. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I'm locked in. You guys are amazing. You're great people. I don't ever want to not be playing games with you guys. So that kind of attitude. And like I said, that's not really something you can necessarily manufacture out of thin air. It comes from a lot of time. And the biggest thing is spending time together, play other games together, do stuff after the tournament, have a connection that goes beyond just the cards. And I think everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of players. Yeah, we have several players who who I mean, I don't want to sound mean, but they're not that good, right? But they come out and they stick with it, and now we're friends with them, and they're just they're a part of the group like anybody else. We have inside jokes with them, and we joke together, we laugh together, right? So, I appreciate those people, right? It takes a lot to come out and lose a lot, right? So I appreciate them coming out and keeping things light and sticking with it, and until we can get to that point where we have like a real friendship, that we just happen to create over cards.
That was very moving, actually. So I lost my train of thought. So specifically, you guys, all right, we've gone through this. There's a long history dating back to John Bruno being he was like the second or third world champion, right?
Second?
Second.
Yeah, Casey, Greg.
Did Greg win before Bruno, or did Bruno win before Greg? This is
Greg won, I think, the year before Bruno.
So the third world champion. So yeah. Going back from the third world champion to present, how is the second edition treating SoCal? You've gotten one card design, we know that so far, right?
Yeah.
How is second edition treating y'all? Is it a growth period? Is it some contraction? What's going on?
As far as a meta, as far as the meta, it was a growth. Like I said, as soon as 2.0 dropped, our meta grew. We were having weekly league tournaments of I think 30 plus. It was really good. Since then, we've contracted a bit and gone back down. But I still think there's more of us now in 2.0 than there were at the end of first edition. So that's
certainly.
Yeah, it's been good.
Things are up. Numbers are up. Quality of players is up.
Yeah, for sure.
Has the world of Rokukan impacted any aspects of your community so far? Has it sort of cooled the fires? Like that's definitely an issue we've had here in the Northeast of sort of people using the game as a placeholder for their real passion, which is fake Japan, sort of exiting.
I can tell you love it, Roy.
Yeah.
So I'm playing in a tournament on Saturday, so I don't hate it.
Oddly enough, the only players that we've really lost over to L5R are not our Thrones players. They're the Netrunner players out of our store. I think there's 3 or 4 of the guys in our Netrunner community that moved over to playing L5R. There was one guy who used to play Thrones. I think he's probably stopped. But I caught him with some L5R cards in his hand the other day. But that's
some people
all right.
are just serial gamers where they just whatever is new, they're just going to play that, and they won't stick with anything for that long, and that's fine. That's just one way to do it. Like I said, I could have been in that group if it wasn't for the strong connection made when it was just Thrones. Mm-hmm. So I think John's pretty much right, especially in San Diego. We don't have any Thrones losses that I can attribute to L5R.
But Destiny, right? We lost Bruno to Destiny, right?
I think we were losing Bruno anyway. He's filling the gap. He and Ram are filling the gap with Destiny. I don't even know if they're playing it that much anymore. John, do you know?
No, I don't think Ram is at all. And I know Bruno went to like a first outing of Destiny a couple weeks ago, but it had been a while for him on that too. So
I definitely wouldn't say Destiny stole him. I think he wasn't loving the transition. I think maybe he'll come back once the card pool's a little better, once he's in a better spot himself. And I look forward to the third return of John Bruno. Pretty sure he'll win a world championship in the first year he's back. It'll be Targaryen. It'll have 63 cards, and that'll be 3 in a row. That's the thing. That's a problem in SoCal, actually. It's with some of the older guys. I'm a big 60 cards guy. I don't
I did
hate
not know
61
this.
card guys. I can get along with 61 card guys, but we have a couple Targaryen 63 cards is the way to win world championships because Bruno did it twice. I'm just like, he's a math teacher. He's a math teacher, and he ran 63 cards both times he won.
You
Blows my
cannot
mind. This makes me angry.
you cannot fault the guy who was born on July 7th for wanting to have a number divisible by 7 of cards in his deck.
Is that why he did it? That's not why he did it.
Because you can sort your cards. You can pile sort your cards into 7 even decks if you have 63.
I hate it.
I like my cheeky 61.
You and I could get along at a bar, but
62. I feel it's just morally reprehensible. 63. I mean, that's a world championship level. Like I can't argue with that.
right.
Like,
You've
but the
gone
question is,
far enough
has
to come back around.
right now? But do we have any world champions who've been running 62 cards? We've had ones that've been running 61, but 62. When that happens, then we can all listen to you. But all right. So I think we're sort of moving to the tail end of the show. So I'm going to focus a little bit on Stolic. So I'm sorry, John, that this is going to be a little bit more of a Ryan-focused stuff. This is what happens when
with us in the spirit.
It's my own fault.
So, all right. So, Ryan, why? Why is SoCal invading the castle in Germany this year? What caused 6 of you, as you said earlier, to decide this is the year?
We talked about it after Worlds 2 years ago. I mean, it's always been a part of the mythos and the community. We all love Thrones. We all love Thrones at the highest competitive level, and knowing that the World Championships in Minnesota is not the biggest tournament every year kind of puts a little damper on it. You know, like it's certainly not the pinnacle numbers wise. I think there's just an inherent increase in the difficulty with more people. So I don't have any problem saying that Stolic is the hardest and biggest test for Thrones on an annual basis, and we've never done that. Like we've never competed at what amounts to the highest level. So that feels like a miss in our group for a lot of us to just have never had that great test. The settings obviously amazing. I like that it's so big now that you have to make the cut to play in the castle. The Swiss rounds are down in the town, so you don't just be given the opportunity to play Thrones in a castle in a competitive way. You have to earn your way in. It's also just a great trip. We're going to spend 2 weeks in Europe, only 5 of it at Stolic, or 5 days of it at Stolic. So it's kind of if we're going to go to Europe anyway, why don't we go in beautiful November? That's definitely not true. I'm not stoked about the weather.
I'm sure you picked specifically. You were just like, you know what?
Honey,
let's just go to Europe in November, and maybe there's this tournament in Germany, in a cold part of Germany as well. It's not even like southern Germany, Yeah.
It very much was a trip to go to the Stolic tournament, and once significant others got rolled into it, it's become a 2-week excursion. We'll be going to Munich and then Venice and Florence after Stolic, and a couple of our guys are already over there in England right now. Johnny Wright and Stephen Ebry. Sorry, there's 7 of us going from SoCal. I left off Stephen Ebry, but he's the LA guy. There's six of us from San Diego, and then one from LA.
One from LA. So, what are you fearing the most about Stolic? Are there any Stolic horror stories that are sort of keeping you up at night? Because John said you're pulling an all-nighter. Is it just quivering in your boots of having to play in a non-competitively hollow meta in Europe?
Hollowest. Well, the all-nighter tonight is just about trying to sleep on the plane tomorrow morning. That's certainly not nerves-based, although I'm sure there'll be a lot of Thrones tonight. I'm just excited. Like I'm nervous I won't do well. I'm always get really nervous before a tournament. Starting with the very first tournament that we drove to, CaliCon. I was up all night playing, getting reps And then I ended up playing the guy I was getting reps with all night in the first round. And I was like, all right, we know each other's decks perfectly. I was like, it's like a 30-person tournament. I thought, there's no way we're going to play. It was a guy that I'd never met before as a NorCal guy, and we just were both worried about reps on our deck. So that kind of started my nervous Nelly behavior before tournaments, and it's pretty much stayed that way the whole time throughout my career. So until I'm got a couple wins under my belt, I'm probably going to be a little jittery and then settle in and hopefully make a good run. So one interesting thing, actually, I will mention is that when we were booking our lodging in the castle for Stalik, it was mentioned by more than one person because we had significant others with us, and we have 15 people traveling, and we're all staying in the castle, men, women, everybody. It was said by more than one person, are you going to be okay with naked Brits running into your room at any hour of the night, thinking it's their room, and maybe trying to get in bed with you? And I was like, I think so. Like, I think that's not.
It depends
that bad.
on the Brit. That's all. Yeah.
There's a difference. It was very specifically
both Peel and a Bamford.
Brit. It's going to be there could be a naked Brit throwing up in your trash can in your room, or potentially falling asleep on the floor in your 6-person room. I said, I didn't even pull my group. I was like, yeah, no problem. So I don't even know if everyone in my group knows that was a warning, but
now they do.
They do.
Hang. Yeah. No, none of them are watching this, so it'll still
maybe
be
Show and Thaw will eventually get around to watching it. So what have you done to prepare for the most dangerous game, which is drinking at Stalik? Have you been pre-gaming?
I'm a little out of practice, honestly. It's gonna be a shock. I think James has been practicing a lot more than me recently. He's our champion, to be fair. Like I have a pretty good history with it. John can attest to the number of times I've, been a little disoriented in our room when we go on trips, and I usually can rally the next morning. I've made 2 melee cuts, hungover as anyone could ever be. I think there's like a sympathy factor to that. Like nobody sees me as a threat because I'm doubled over in pain the entire time.
I mean, you did look like you were going to die at that melee table with Corey and Seth and Buzz. Like you literally looked like any moment the hand of God could smite you for your sins. Like at that table, I
should not have made it that year for sure. Although the top 16 game before that is the best melee game I've ever played, where I threatened a what's the Dracaris from first edition? Incinerate. Based on give like X strength where it's a trait, and I threatened that for 4 rounds in a row, and I held 2 of the unblockable Eurons at bay because I told both of the players, if either of you ever do a single challenge against anyone with that Euron, you want to be the first one, I will incinerate it, and then the other guy will have Euron and you won't. And they both were just like, what? That's bullshit. There's 2 DC guys because that was a DC deck. And I was like, I'm just saying, I don't want to choose between you. Like, don't make me choose. Just don't put Euron in a challenge and you won't get incinerated. And they had big old boards with all these other guys, but the whole deck was built around Euron. And if there weren't 2 of them at the same table, I wouldn't have been able to have that very clear parity of if you're going to be the first one to flinch, you're going to get blown up. And after the game, we were picking up, and I won it. And the guy across from me, the 4th guy, said, "How many did you have? How many did you have?" And I showed him my cards. I didn't have a single one all game, and I was like, I can't believe I have to play in the finals. Like, let me go puke. Yeah, I'm worried about that. There's some serious drinking over there. I don't want to try and win any contests. I just want to have a nice, calm enough time.
Slow and steady, like the ocean.
Yeah, slow burn.
Wow. Slow burn. All right. Well, I think that brings this episode mostly to an end. Buzz has a closing question for both of you, though. If you got to choose, which meta in the world would you like for the next episode?
What's already been picked?
The episodes they've already done are the Paris, Polish, Czech, Munich, and Middlesbrough, which I think is the banter meta. have already gone. So this could be U.S. or internationally. Any meta that isn't already there.
John?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe.
I've got two, so I can cover up John's.
Yeah.
I've
Let me
got an
think.
international one. I would very much like to hear about the Greek meta, the Greek national meta. I owe a lot of my card designs to a Greek guy. I don't know his real name, but his username was Sarazu, and he gave me the deck list for the Greyjoy Holy deck that I won the Melee and the overall with. And I've thanked him several times, but I will never stop thanking him. It was a crazy deck, and I was crazy to play it in Joust, but it was all because of him. Beautiful deck construction, and it seems like they're a big group of people that play within Greece. Maybe not as well traveled, but I just don't know enough, and I'm very intrigued about the Greek meta. And then locally, I think it would be. I know they're connected to DC, but I think if you just did the Wisconsin group, I think there'd be a lot to talk about.
Sam
you could get
Sam's,
Kid. I think you should get Kid on there.
You'd
even
have
though
to
he's
get
not
Kid.
playing right now.
Yeah, I think you could get Kid. Kid would love to tell the old war stories.
Yeah. Kid could give you some of the past, and then Sam could just be himself. It's just hilarious anyway. I just want to see more of Sam anyway. Although that episode of Banter where they were both off their ass drunk was really tough to get through. It was funny, but it was tough sledding there for the hosts. I felt bad for them.
You should never feel bad for the Banter guys and their shenanigans with their guests. So, having had a drunk off his ass Banter host, two of them on my show,
they'll just go ruin other shows.
Yeah, they can give as good as they get. All right. Well, sorry. Buzz wants me to ask.
Sorry.
So, what question would you ask them? What's the question you would ask these other metas?
Are we trying to? Buzz just wants us to do his job for him.
Yeah,
no,
that's what he's doing. You refuse. All right. Well, on that note,
I'd just like to hear origin stories. Would be my
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the old history because I didn't come in at the beginning of Thrones in California, so we've got so much that we didn't even talk about today. Just crazy things that happened, and like Dany being the Queen of Love and Beauty. Like there's all kinds of fun stories that just it's fun to tell the new people about them, and I think that could translate well to hearing other metas. What are the stories that you use to hook people? Because we do that a lot too. John didn't talk about that in the meta growing, but if you have some really good, either funny or incredible stories, that can really help a new person feel connected to the group.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're playing a game that's been around technically for close to 20 years now, right? And I think one of the things I love about it is that history. Hearing about the great DC. One of the first game nights I ever went to, I heard about the great DC disqualification at Melee, and I was like, this game just is full of characters, and it has this rich history, and it's one of the best things about this game. So on that happy note, I want to thank Buzz for letting me do this, and I want to thank Ryan and John for joining me tonight. Good luck, Ryan. Go Team USA. Yeah, and hopefully you'll represent the wonderful beard and our country at Stalik. I want to also, of course, thank Jakob and Samuel for letting me fill their virtual chair here. I hope the listeners / viewers enjoyed me as the host. I don't know when Buzz is going to schedule the next one, but I'm sure he'll use his wonderful new Buzz super media presence to let you all know. So until then, take care, everyone, and tune in to the Second Sons or the White Book to get the same high quality content.
Cross promo.
Oh yeah.
Thank you, Roy.
Thanks,
Yeah. I hope you guys